All right, we're back with Building the Groundwork. I got it right this time. Dan Maitland with Ajax. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, so Dan works for probably one of the preeminent road builders in Florida. Appreciate you coming in person also, which is fun. But would love to talk all things industry, learn about your background, how you got into it, and just your point of view on some certain key topics for the next hour or so. So welcome.
Cool. Glad to be here and looking forward to it.
Yeah. So Ajax, let's start there. What is your role at Ajax for everybody?
So I'm the fleet manager, and I'm in charge of our equipment division, and I've been with Ajax for a little over 9 years.
And it's a pretty large fleet. How many pieces?
I would say we count around 600 pieces, about $30 million worth of ERV replacement value.
Okay.
So medium. I'll call it a medium-sized fleet.
And so that's just the Florida operation, correct?
Yes.
And so you also have a Michigan operation?
We do. We're separate companies.
Okay.
Yeah, we're from Michigan originally, and a few years ago, ownership bought out, and we're separate. Yep.
And so you pave all over the state of Florida, or are you concentrated in certain areas primarily?
Pretty much, we pave in Southwest Florida. So I would say from Tampa, maybe Brooksville north. That's our northern border down to Naples, a little bit out to Central Florida as well, Lakeland, Polk County. But we kind of a Southwest Florida footprint, if you will.
And so, I mean, road building down here is a great segment to be in, right? There's no shortage of roads that need to be repaired, built. What is the outlook for work for you guys for the next few years?
I mean, man, we're probably like most road builders, our backlog is booked, to say the least. We have more tons of asphalt on our backlog than in any point in history and time. So I don't want to say recession-proof, but if there's one thing that might be a little bit resistant to it would be asphalt paving in the state of Florida.
And how many asphalt plants do you guys have?
8.
8 plants,
yep.
And they're scattered across your footprint that you just mentioned, Southwest Florida.
Yep. So we kind of have a strategy, if you will. We only use our own asphalt, so we don't take jobs that are more than hour and a half away from our plants for logistics. And so that's wherever our asphalt plant is. You draw a radius about an hour, and that's kind of our footprint.
Okay. So your background is in the industry, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You worked for dealers. I mean, everyone knows the name Ajax. Who's in the industry, very, very well-known, reputable company. What would you say is like the reason for success? Like, what does Ajax do really, really well?
That's a great question, because when you're in the trenches every day, sometimes you question what you do very well. Ajax is been around since the 80s, so it starts with great people, great leadership. Mike Horan, that's really where it starts. Is if you have great people at the top, then it's gonna transition downward and to the rest of your employees. And I would say Ajax is very open to new technologies and trends, which is kind of very ironic. We're sitting here talking.
Right.
And so we push boundaries and take chances and try to be ahead of the curve. So I think that's one of the...
Can you give us an example of some of the new technologies then? Because that is something... that it stands out, especially in this industry, right? It's very old school, very, hey, we've done things this way, it works. So it does stand out if you're someone who wants to be ahead of the curve.
For sure. So one thing that we're doing from an equipment standpoint is we're experimenting with autonomous wheel loaders.
Interesting.
No operator in the seat, somebody driving it remote from usually an on-site location. So we're experimenting with that at our asphalt plants. So we're in a trial period with that. But I would say that's pretty forward-thinking, different. What else? We were early adopters for doing things like using computerized maintenance software. I mean, I've been here, like I said, over 9, getting close to 10 years, and Ajax already had that before I got here, and that was pretty forward-thinking. We were pretty early on the telematics train of putting GPS on equipment.
And so was that Mike has always been very forward-thinking, very innovative? Is that
yes, correct.
a common theme?
I would say the Haran family and leadership has always been very
Interesting.
technology, as much as we can be in the road
Sure.
paving business.
Yeah, I
Right?
get you.
Yeah.
So the autonomous equipment, I'm starting to read more about that. So experimenting with autonomous operation of wheel loaders or asphalt plants, what is the value to your company of doing that? What are the benefits?
Well, again, it's kind of too soon to tell. That's why it is a pilot. But the theory is, as we know, just like mechanics, I'm sure we'll talk about, operators are hard to come by. They're not just showing up on our doorsteps, putting in applications. So we need to lower the barrier of entry for operators. See, before, 15 years ago, it was hard to get skilled operators. Now it's hard to get operators, period.
Okay.
So we really need to lower the bar and make it more accessible. And if you can have, when I say more accessible, I mean now you don't need to physically be in the machine. So that
Right.
might open the door to, say, a wounded veteran or something, or somebody that can't get out of a chair, per se, can't climb into a machine. Or it becomes more attractive to a younger generation of, the video game generation. Which
Right. Yeah. So
I'm
they're
not
just
opposed to.
right. So I was talking to somebody, a customer. It was actually in Southwest Florida as well, who's an early adopter of the same technology, and I didn't realize it. But he was explaining to me one of the benefits was like they were landing work that was pretty far from their corporate location,
Sure.
and so it became very difficult for their employees, where it's like, hey, we have to drive 2 hours south. It's a long commute, and then people didn't want to do it. And so by opting into that pilot, now your people who live locally can just work on that equipment remotely. So it's just something that never even crossed my mind. It was interesting.
Yeah, and it's like anything else. If you look at the utilization of a loader in its work day, it might be working 6 hours out of a 10-hour day. So the question is, in that 4-hour period, is the guy eating lunch, doing any
Sure.
number of things, which is fine. We're all humans, but that's where you can 2x your abilities. Is where, okay, we don't need a skilled operator to drive from this location to this location at an asphalt plant in the middle.
Right.
We know what that path is every single time. Yes, when we get to a bin, have to do something complicated, switch to an operator.
Right.
And then now he can switch to another screen. This thing drives back here automatically on its own, and he's doing something a little more complicated at another location. That's the end game, is where you're like 2xing with one guy.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Or girl.
And how long have you been running this pilot?
We're about 3 months in, I would say. And
Okay.
Again, it's very early, and I don't know if we're ready for it yet. I'll be honest with you, but
Sure.
we're trying it, and that's the biggest thing, is just trying things.
Yeah, definitely. Look, a lot of people don't try stuff.
Right.
So it's that's really fascinating. So is it I'm assuming probably like a 6-month pilot, I'm guessing.
Well, I can't get into the legal details. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
I'm just kidding. I would say, I think it's a year.
Okay.
I think it's a year.
And is it just one plant? You starting with like a couple machines? All right.
Yeah,
very
we're starting
cool.
at one location, and if we can master it there, then we'll even remotely think about expanding it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As the equipment manager, what are the biggest headaches that you have on a daily, weekly basis?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. I feel like anymore, it's just balancing. Equipment managers nowadays, it's just you have, like anything else, a lot on your plate, a lot of different factors. You got personnel issues, you have inner workings, because we're kind of like the cog in the wheel for operations. So we have to be the middleman between asphalt plants and operations, construction in the field, and then we have our shops. So you just have a lot of moving pieces, and our customer is ourselves. So it's weird in the sense, like those are our customers, so we still want to stay customer oriented, but it's very demanding. So what's struggling as a fleet manager is it's like trying to make improvements versus the old way, and we live in a very much and operate in a reactive world. So it's like we're constantly trying to be proactive, but when construction sites happen, things break down, or
Right. Other people's problems become your problem.
Problems become your problems. That's the hardest thing. So staying focused and actually getting things done, because there's infinite possibilities in your day, just like anything, just like.
Sure. Yeah, and so that's, yeah. Have there been any new challenges, or is it just recycling all the typical same ones over time?
I mean, honestly, the new challenge is also the same challenge, is just keeping employees motivated, keeping the team moving in the same direction, fighting corporate red tape, right? I mean, we're a mom and pop's company, but we're not anymore.
Right.
So it's
How many employees now?
We're over 500. So, and we still like to think we're a mom and pop's 20-person operation. Heave might feel that one day. Right?
That's the goal.
Is that the goal?
That's the goal.
You know, keeping that, that quick decision, because at the end of the day, we're still a quick decision, reactive. It's not turning the Titanic. We can make decisions pretty quickly.
Sure. Do you have to visit the paving jobs frequently?
I wouldn't say frequently, but demos, or it's like customer visits. Check on job sites every now and then, and but it's not part of my requirement, if you will.
Yeah, I got you.
But it's cool, right? It gets you out of the office. Like, it makes me appreciate what the guys and girls do in this industry, because walk outside right now and count your blessings that anybody paves asphalt in the state of Florida in the summertime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that I found really interesting about you, because we've known of each other for a few years, was we had similar starts. You worked for a dealer. You were a sales rep, which is, I love that you're on the customer side after having a dealer background. Like, you're the most dangerous guy, because you know how dealers operate. No one's going to be able to put the high pressure on you, like, hey, no, you got to buy this machine today, or else it's going to find another home, or, hey, you've had this on rent for a few months, this is what I can offer, but it's only good for the rest of the week. Like, all the games, right? And so what was your experience starting out working for the dealership like?
So I'd say my dealership, I really started in equipment rental. And then I went to a dealership, which, the great thing about equipment rental, you kind of learn a lot about everything. It's like the jack of all trades, master of none, because your fleet is diverse, and indirectly that gets you ready for a job like for a contractor, because you have a wide range of fleet. And a lot of times OEM dealers, they have a wide range of fleet nowadays, but still sometimes they're narrow focused in a couple major categories of equipment, and that's what they do, and that's great. But I've appreciated being on both sides just for that very reason. It makes me more sympathetic to a salesperson.
Sure.
I've mastered the skill of kicking them out very politely, where they don't even know it happened. Or maybe they did. They probably do. Who am I kidding?
Right,
but
right.
Like, people laugh, are like, you were so, like, you just kicked them out so quickly, but so nicely. Like, it was
right.
That was good.
How were you as a sales rep or a rental rep?
God, I like to think I was good, but looking back, I could have been better.
Well,
I think I'd be better now. I'd be much more dangerous now.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, if you could go back knowing what you know from the customer side, what would you have done differently?
That's so funny. I would be more confident. That's what I tell people, be more confident, because at first you don't feel like you deserve to be there. You're intimidated in a big office, and you just, that's the biggest thing when you're young. Some people are very confident and they don't have that problem.
Right.
I'm fairly confident, but still, you had to fake it till you make it early on. Now it's more real, and you have a purpose to be there. So I would say now, being there for a reason, that's the biggest thing.
Sure. Not just the drop-in.
Not the drop-ins, that's funny. We're past the days of swinging it on unannounced sales calls anymore.
Right.
That's got to be a thing of the past, unless you truly know the person and I know who they are. But even then, it still kind of irks me a little bit.
Sure.
Like, make an appointment.
Right.
Call me, text me. Because, man, as life goes on, it's like you got so much going on. Somebody walks in your door, and you might not have the mental ability to really give that person your attention.
Sure.
So that's different. I was taught cold calling early on. And now I would teach against cold calling. Cold calling is necessary if all else has failed, or if you're truly prospecting.
Sure.
But, God, that's desperate. Cold calling is like the last resort. Warm up the call. Find a way to warm up the call.
Yeah, it's that is the hard part, because we're all taught that, right? Yeah. And have you seen it? the nature of things change between like sales rep activities from when you started and now? Like, or is it basically the same?
It's the same, but it's getting more sophisticated.
In what way?
Just because the sales force is getting younger, so you see more texting, you see more, reaching out on social media. That stuff wasn't around.
Yeah, social media is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I would have had it. I'm sure you do too. You're pretty active on it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's it's a weird thing. It comes across as cheesy at first, but once you get past like, oh, I'm trying to beat my own drum, like.
Well, I mean, approaching it from like if I was a vendor, right? I think it's so powerful because like what you were just describing, you're saying, hey, don't just drop in, have a reason to drop in. But with social media now, people have the opportunity. Like if I was a sales rep and I was calling on your company, I could go on social media, see how like things that you've posted. I would be able to learn about you. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about is like you use it really strategically of like, hey, this is what irks me. Like I've seen your video about, hey, don't drop in. Like, hey, Ajax, we've got all these projects going on. Like I've got all these things to juggle. Make an appointment. So like those, you have these tools that weren't there when you and I started, where you can actually, you have a way to research and learn about someone and learn about a company a lot more than, so I'm sure you were in the same boat that I was. Like you're handed a printout of an Excel file. It has like 20 customer names or 50 customer names with like an address that is just like one of their 8 addresses anyway. And most of them don't even have a name attached to it. And it's like, all right, just go see these customers and then build the territory.
Sure.
And like social media can be really powerful. And that's one of the things that I like about doing this podcast, like having conversations with people, is like I'm hoping that people can watch it and maybe learn something about like a guest, if it's somebody that they are trying to do business with or something. So it's much more tools available today than there used to be.
Well, I think it's important, and I know for me personally, is like I was willing to kind of develop my own branding for myself, and then once you get past of the point, like I said, the self-consciousness of putting yourself out there on social media, because that's real. But I heard someone say, if you don't tell your story, someone else can tell it for you. So tell the story of Ajax, tell the story of Dan, and like I think it's cool. Like, hey, fleet management is on the surface a nerd, dull industry. You know what I mean? Told someone else getting amped up to go do a podcast on fleet management topics, and that doesn't exactly like get the crowd wild. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's no reason. That's what we do. Be passionate about it. Own it.
Yeah, I mean, it's your job, and you're looking to get better at it, right? And so, I mean, I'm sure from your position, you can use social media to gain access to like other companies or other fleet managers who maybe you admire, or you just want to ask them how they do things for like best practices. I'm sure, right?
Well, I think too. Just for me, it's a goal to better the industry, and so when you're a paying customer and people are trying to get your business. And then you do things like put a message out there, like, hey, this is a problem I have, and this annoys my daily life. Can anybody solve it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's cool. I think that's cool.
Yeah, that reminds me. So I saw that exact thing. You put something out recently. I think it was asking for like more transparency on like rental rates. Is that what it was?
Pretty much. It's so what does a fleet manager struggle with? We struggle with every rental company has a nice portal where you can log on and see what you have on rent. And they push you to go use that, but not any one contractor uses one rental company.
Right.
So I don't want to have to log into 5 rental companies to see what I have on rent, to see the rates, to see what I've paid, to see the CAT class of equipment. Because what I'm trying to do is, what do I need to buy for next year? What have we rented in the last 6 months? What are we trying to rent? And be strategic about it. So that is the goal of mine, is being strategic about. So what can salespeople do? Like, be strategic about helping me be better at my job.
Right.
But to answer your question of the transparency of rates, there's this long-standing thing of fear between rental companies of knowing what the rates are, but we all know what they are anyway.
Yes.
It's like, remember, like when you would quote a sale on a machine, don't let anybody see this quote.
Right.
But we all know what it is.
Right.
Your competition knows what it is. So why
Yes.
are we like acting like we don't?
Correct. It's kind of, it's always been silly. And especially with like rental too, where it's like, I mean, I would imagine that you probably rent the same size machine for about the same monthly rate amongst all the vendors too, right? But nobody, yeah, like you said, they're all afraid to.
So my challenge was, okay, so give us that data, right? You're giving it to us one-on-one, but if we put it in a third-party safe spot or however we present it, okay, get all the major owned companies to offer like an API feed, just like the OEM construction equipment offers an API feed for telematics,
Right.
and give us our rental information so we can do something with it quickly and easily and make decisions on it. So we don't have to have somebody at every construction company who keeps spreadsheets and keeps track of what's on rent. That's not efficient.
No, yeah, I see like the last few years, yeah, there's a lot of conversation around, oh, all this data is available, but it takes a lot of work to then, look at the data, put it in a usable format, and then, make decisions based on it. So it's like there's still 4 more steps to go.
Right, and I was laughing because some of the people commenting were like, well, just use your partnerships and they can get you what you want. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, you shouldn't have to be a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar contractor to get that from a major rental house. That should be open for everybody.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion for people. It's like, hey, if you want to earn someone's business, make it really easy for the customer. Giving them maybe that they're not even asking for, but giving
Right.
it something that they can do something with. That's good. So that kind of transitions. You're very active in the AEMP, and I would assume that this type of topic are things that you discuss with your peers. Is that right?
I would say so. So AEMP, the Association of Equipment Management Professionals, is literally its sole existence is bettering the industry for equipment managers. So it's like that at a fundamental level is like kind of why I got excited for even posting on social media to help people. Nobody grows up to be an equipment manager, and I'm not saying we're gonna have posters of dozers on our bedroom as a kid growing up and wanting to be an equipment manager, but we've all stumbled into this career. It can be more deliberate, and that's kind of like one of my goals. Like just, I remember early on, like people would say, "Oh, your husband works in construction. That must be hard." You know what I mean? It's like, no, he's not like digging a ditch.
Not a
like,
laborer.
They're in
right?
equipment, yeah, and it's actually very profitable. But point being is, so AEMP, we tackle issues like even before I joined several years ago, the standard of telematics import. You've heard of AEMP standard 2.0. Like they went around to all the OEMs and kind of did just that. They say, hey, give us your hours, location. You guys have that data. Free it to the customer. And they agreed to it, and they did.
In one standard format, so that you don't have to what you were describing. It's like, hey, I have 5 different logins for 5 different rental companies. Can't we just make this? Yeah.
Yes. So that's one of the things that we tackle, but we also focus on like training and education because we want to gear the equipment management professionals of the future to be trained and educated.
Yeah, and the organization offers like certification classes for companies that they can send like a younger equipment manager to, right? And teaches you like the basic financials and like best practices on how to manage fleet. Is that right?
Yep. There's core competencies that we focus on. We have conferences with educational content. I've seen you there before. It's a great experience. It's networking. And let's face it, it helps knowing peers in the industry going through your struggles on a daily basis who become friends across the country that you can pick up the phone and rely on. So
like,
it's also kind of what AEMP does.
How when you encounter an issue, you can pick up the phone and call somebody, hey, how have you navigated this?
And then get a collective of voices, and the next thing you know, you can get some stuff done. So
yeah, and you mentioned like nobody grows up to be a fleet manager, but I would imagine that fleet has to be a contractor's largest expense, right?
I would say so, absolutely.
Yeah.
The operating costs and the CapEx, the capital expenditures, makes up
It wasn't cheap when I worked at a dealer, selling
No.
it and renting it.
The rolling stock equipment is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, investment besides buildings and plants. It's the biggest investment.
So, like, does at AMP amongst your peers, like, do you talk about like strategies with fleet about like, percentage to rent, lease, and own, and like all that kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah, we do.
Okay.
So you look at things like the life cycle costs, ownership costs, and life cycle costs of equipment, and the science behind it. And again, every company's different, every scenario is different, but at least measuring and making decisions based upon historical data and knowing your company. But yeah, so we train on things like tracking, like when to repair versus replace, when to rent versus, for instance, a little nutshell is if you don't run a machine for 300 hours a year, you're better off renting.
Okay.
That's like a generic. So if you're not going to put 300 hours of utilization on a machine, on average, you're better off renting that thing because you got to own it. If you purchased it, you're not making money off it by having it sit. So things like that. Getting a little more scientific with it.
I got you. What do you guys share like behind closed doors, like owner operating costs, or is like a hot button? But everyone says that they have the lowest owner operator costs. Like, are there behind closed door? Hey, we John Deere versus Komatsu let 15% lower operating costs. Like, do you guys talk about that kind of stuff?
We do, but honestly, it's there's so many factors. It's hard to blame one OEM because it really comes down to the operator.
Oh, okay.
If you think about it, that's actually the single most important factor in equipment maintenance is the operator. Because you have two similar machines, you can put the same hours on them. But if one guy runs it rough or doesn't grease it on a daily basis, is that really John Deere's fault or Caterpillar's fault that it didn't have more breakdowns?
Right.
So it's very hard to, pin it down on a
that has
on a
to be
manufacturer.
really difficult to manage though, because to get with someone like that, because that person, maybe you have an operator who's running stuff really rough. He's getting in a machine tomorrow. He's on a machine right now.
Right.
And so you got to do a lot of analysis, I guess, then to catch operators who are maybe creating more issues with equipment, right?
So that's part of the struggle, right? What does a fleet manager struggle with? How to tie in operators that don't report directly to you, and do things like have audits on job sites to inspect machines. That's something we do at Ajax Paving. We have an self-made audit system program that we do in-house with our own people, and we go check on machines and have a checklist, and we give them pass, or fail grade, and we reward the crews that do a good job. They actually get money.
Interesting.
So it's like you got like trust but verify, right? It's like, and again, that's a never-ending battle.
Sure. Does the AEMP share a similar view on technology that you guys do at Ajax? Is that like a big topic?
Yeah, I would say AEMP is very technology focused, very friendly to startups. You know any startups?
Yeah, I do. It's been helpful for that. It seems that they're pretty cutting edge.
Let's talk about Heave, man. Come on.
No, that's not really the purpose, but we can get into a few things.
Yeah.
You guys, I do know you guys have your own mechanics, right? So you got to manage those as well, right? So that's got to be a tough thing. You got machines going all over, managing job sites, but then now you got to manage technicians because that's difficult for dealers even to manage their own technicians.
Yes. Yes.
Training their technicians,
Yes.
making sure
them.
they're utilized and they're not sweeping the floor, right?
Yep. Keeping them product, not chasing down parts all day. It's a constant struggle. But yeah, let's talk about Heave. So I'm gonna talk about Heave.
You have any questions on Heave?
No, I think it's a great idea. I think you guys. I was fairly early in the process. I remember when you guys started, and I think it's freaking awesome finding technology. So for me, I call you sometimes, and I'll throw out ideas like, hey, how do we find mechanics? Alex, like, what can we do? And you're like, you've usually thought about it. but I think it's great because we use other softwares like for parts procurement and stuff like that. So finding ways to supplement our mechanics.
Sure.
Because you don't have enough.
No.
You don't have enough to totally clear up your backlog of work orders.
So let me ask you then, why do you think there's a shortage of mechanics?
Same reason as there's a shortage of everything in construction. Just not a lot of people are growing up doing it. I think the trend is turning around, but it was not a desirable. When I was growing up, you're going to college. You're going down a different path. It was never, the trades were not even, presented as much.
They weren't. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to James DeVinny earlier this week. I think it was earlier this week or last week, and he used a really good word. He said exposure.
Yeah.
There's not as much exposure to it when you're younger, and I think that's really accurate. Like there's no more shop classes in a lot of schools.
Right.
I was not exposed to it. I'm very envious of people with that talent.
For sure.
Because I can't fix anything. I wish I was exposed to it. But I also, and I think this is something that we've talked about a little bit, is personally to me, one of the biggest challenges and reasons that I see for the mechanic shortage is the economics of it. I would say that heavy-duty diesel mechanics are grossly underpaid for the job that they do. This is all like highly complex machinery. You guys run pavers that are probably $400,000, $500,000 pavers, and it's a highly urgent. If a paver goes down, that project is down.
Sure.
Right, and you have all this asphalt, and so you need someone that can go out with who's highly skilled, fix a $500,000 asset, and for the wage that is people pay today, which hasn't really moved in the last 5-10 years. I mean, that is a huge reason to me why there's not as many people going into the profession. And that's one of the things that we're trying to change and talk about is, I don't know the last time like you hired a plumber, but I hired a plumber to my house, and it was like $350 an hour. There's a reason for that. And so why would a heavy-duty diesel mechanic who's fixing a $500,000 paver be paid $32 an hour?
Right.
That has a lot to do with it, in my opinion. So that's one of the things that we're trying to address, and I think gives us a lot of tailwinds for where we're going is, there's a movement for guys to be independent because they can earn closer to market rate.
For sure. And then there's a shortage. That's
right.
So sometimes that's why I call you and I'm like, hey, I need to find a mechanic.
Right.
So that's kind of like the other thing. That's why I think what's cool about what you guys are doing is, I'm like driving here and I'm thinking like, man, I could see Heave being like the hub for mechanics because yes, we need them, but also we need them to go to a place too to look for jobs.
That's true.
Because you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what if like, some people are looking for a home, because we advertise on Indeed.com and wherever else, and I don't even know that's where mechanics are looking for jobs. Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. So it's like you almost need a hub for them to come in, and then it's like, okay, they can either join this cool thing where it's like Heave's like a launching point. You know what I mean? Like gets them in the door and gets them access to all these contractors.
Yeah, I agree. It's something. Look, all we are is a labor marketplace, and when you have conditions like they are right now, it's the labor has a lot more leverage. They know that they're in short supply, and what we're doing is no different than other industries. Like I became familiar with. There's a nursing marketplace where especially with COVID, you have. A lot of nurses were overworked and people didn't want to go in the profession, and so then therefore hospitals don't have near enough nurses, and then a labor marketplace pops up, And now nurses are able to like, oh, you know what? I earn this typically. Now I'm going to put my services out there for double, and oh, I got hired to work a couple shifts at this hospital. I mean, that's what marketplaces do fundamentally, and that's what the opportunity we have is when there's short supply and there's high demand for the skills. You know, you're giving them a place that can connect both parties very easily.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I didn't mean to hijack the.
No,
but
that's all right. I'm interested. Like, I know you guys are a big user of the parts marketplace, GearFlow. What has been your experience with that, and how has that helped your business?
So again, using technology to reduce mundane tasks. So I'm a big believer in if we're not reducing tasks, and we struggle with this.
Sure.
Why are we adding it? Like, I don't want to add software to just say I'm using a software. It better be reducing something or saving me time somewhere else. So one of the cool things about GearFlow, and again, it has its own adoption challenges like anything else.
Sure.
I also tell people it's like we're so technology. We think technology is going to solve all of our problems by implementation, and that is not the case.
No, you have to work at it. Definitely.
It's a tool it's a process. You got to have a process. You got to have a fundamental steps in your process. Otherwise, software is just going to fail like you're failing without it. So, but something like GearFlow, where they helped us is instead of we didn't have time. I say our parts procurement personnel did not have time to pick up the phone and call for 3 quotes. Ain't got time for that.
Right.
So if you can click a button and it spams out to the selected vendors and they respond back, then you're like 3xing that guy's time.
Right.
You
don't have to chase.
You don't have to chase and follow up because that's a big opportunity for parts, because I think it's something like 85% of parts ordering is still done on the phone or in person.
Right.
The Amazon of heavy equipment parts we're not there.
So that makes me ask this question, and you're a good person to ask it, right? Because you worked at a dealer. I worked at a dealer. I have my thoughts on it, but like knowing how it works, it's really cumbersome on the customer. Like that's what we're kind of talking about, right? Hey, we have these things like renting equipment, buying parts. It's really cumbersome on the customer. Why hasn't there been a lot of change in that? You've been in the industry probably 20 years almost. I've been in it 20 years. Why has it not changed? Like, why are things still really cumbersome? Like, why do you have to be like a really innovative customer to like go try to do stuff different? Why can't it be done by the suppliers?
I mean, that's a good question. Again, because a lot of our users, the end users, are still an older generation. Our beloved mechanics are still either very senior or very young. So you have this like discrepancy. The new guys and gals are much more open to using technology. The other guys only feel comfortable picking up the phone. But imagine you're an OEM parts counter, and we're at the desk here right now, and I'm on the phone, and then there's 2 people walking in. I'm dealing with somebody on the phone, and then there's people waiting, or you can only do one at a time. I can't talk on the phone and take care of these customers. So that alone already inefficient. But if there was like a pool, those guys had requests come in like a Heave or Uber Eats, like
right.
Put it in the queue, and then you can quickly do other things. I can be eating my sandwich and processing orders. But if I'm on the phone, I can't do anything besides one order at a time.
Yeah, maybe that's a good point about like, hey, the existing suppliers and vendors, don't have a lot of youth like in the ranks to where they're pushing to put different changes, changing their process to help customers. Part of my thought, because like when I was at the dealership, I was always amazed. I'm like, everything is hard for our customers. Like, this is crazy. And I didn't work for a cat dealer, so like we had to try to think a little more outside of the box, right? Deals were harder to come by, but I don't know. I think part of it though, and feel free to disagree with me, is there's positives and negatives to everything. I think a big negative is that there's these protected territories. in heavy equipment. And so you're kind of locked in, and you don't I compare it a lot to like the cable companies. Like, hey, when I moved to Tampa, you want to get cable, there's only 3 providers, and we all know that experience. And I just know that like in auto, which is a similar type business, it's not the same. There's a ton of Ford dealers around here, and I think that forces the dealers to always be thinking about things differently, trying to, they're fighting for the business. They're all fighting for your service business. And I think on the equipment side, because it's been kind of locked in like the cable industry, that is part of the reason why it hasn't changed much for the customer.
Right. When you're the only act in town,
Yeah.
people are calling you, and you take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of the mindset.
Sure. It's just what it is, and so that's part of what we're trying to change, is give people an alternative. There's plenty of business to go around, but from where I sit, I think that's been one of the drivers, and it's not going to remain that way forever. Cable is toppled, streaming has crushed it, because they refuse to change and really listen to the customer. Like, who has had a positive experience with a cable company? It just doesn't exist, right?
For sure.
And so I think that's going to slowly happen. Like, I think, like, I talk to Luke every now and then. I know Ben over at GearFlow. Like, I'm excited for them. That's the cool thing about startups is you can basically start from scratch, right? And it can work the way you want it to, and you can design solutions around customers, what their true needs are, and you can also change quickly. Like, the value of like an Ajax, when you're customer or when you're innovative and you're looking for new things, is that you're patient, right? Like, you don't expect this new solution to have all the answers right out of the gate. Right? Like, it's customers like you that help companies like us, like, really learn how, like, what's working, what's not with the product, make a couple changes, and bulletproof it for the future customers that might not be like so trusting early on.
That's a good point. So what's in it for those early customers that are?
To me, that's a good question. I think you guys get a real big head start.
Yeah.
Like the autonomous thing, you'll have a huge head start on everybody else, where they're learning. You'll probably have it dialed in based on your first 12 months of usage, whereas someone new to the party is going to have to, you're already 12 months ahead. Maybe now, hey, because we've done this at this plant, we can now do this at all 8 plants, whereas they're still on the same one machine. And then also, I bet you GearFlow's the same way as us, but we'll always remember our first customers. Shit.
That's the answer I was looking for.
Well, seriously, I mean, like, we all remember like our first customer, and it means a ton, and we'll do anything for our first few.
Well, that's what I like about it. I think everyone wants to help the underdog, and also the level of response and pivot and adjusting is way quicker when you're on the front end of helping out a smaller operation who's hungry.
Sure.
Because once you get too big, you're not as hungry.
No.
And then your product is take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, that's also why I like it, because we're for free. I'm helping design it custom for Ajax or whoever else.
That's another benefit of being early, right? Like, you have, like, customer 500 probably doesn't get to say, hey, I would like it to do this. No.
Yeah.
Whereas if Ajax is like, hey, I would like to see this on this screen, it's like, done. It's probably done.
They're doing it at the hotel room at that night.
Right.
And
exactly.
Making code changes that night and like implementing that night. So that's fun. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I think that's the rewards of jumping on early.
Yeah. But it's it's a cool process to be involved in, though, right? Because you got to feel you're part of it, I would imagine.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So that is part of, again, what does make Ajax? What makes Dan tick? Our jobs would be boring if we weren't trying new things. Life would be boring if we weren't trying new things and getting better. So if you're doing the same thing you were doing 20 years ago, it's already too late.
100%. What do you have, like, personal goals, like career goals that you have your eye on or you're working towards?
That's a good question. Right now, just be the damn good fleet manager.
Okay.
And come on podcasts like this.
We'll see.
And for me, it was join an association. Honestly,
And you're on the board.
I'm on the board at
right?
AEMP. So actually, that is also something else that kind of opened up my eyes. When you're on the same job for 8-9 years, I mean,
Sure.
you got to find ways to reinvent yourself. And join an association is a great way to do it and be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Right.
So for me personally, that was a goal to get involved with a AEMP.
Right.
And now I'm on the board and get to help shape direction and future.
And OEMs, like you guys meet with OEM reps too, right? So you
Yes.
offer suggestions to them. That's cool.
Right. I like to look back one day and be like, yeah, I helped pioneer whatever, the rental 2.0.
Right.
Rental telematics. But, yeah, it's just, if I'm just doing life cycle costs all day, forget about it.
Yeah, that would
Put me out.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very fun.
I like the human element of what we do.
Sure. Do you guys, is Ajax ever talk about going outside of Florida, like Alabama, Georgia, or is that not in the cards? Just focus. You have plenty here.
Just we're like if we go, we're in another 200 mile radius. It's a stepping stone approach. I have not seen like a island approach where we just pick a random spot. So I think we're gonna stay. Can't speak for Mike Moran, but I think we're gonna stay in Florida for right now.
So you're around a lot of customers. You're at the forefront. Technology. You guys are early adopter personalities. Do you see? Are there more and more customers like yourself, or do you think you're still like in the 5%?
I think we're the only ones doing it. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's a trend, and when you join like AEMP, you see the other contractors doing it.
Yeah.
We don't want everyone doing it in our competitive market. So I'm just kidding.
No, it gives you an edge, right? I mean, there's only a certain amount of things that go into the equation. Like you're all bidding work against each other, and so when you can find an advantage, you run with it, right? But it's so because as a vendor, it's like I always am curious as to like what's talked about behind closed doors. Like what are customers talking about with each other? So like are more and more customers like interested in technology? Is that a common discussion topic?
Well, hey man, I think so. I think we look at things like LinkedIn and we're like, hey, that was an interesting post by Middlesex. What are they doing?
Yeah.
And maybe they do that about Ajax or vice versa. So I think we can elevate each other. And I joke about the competition, but it's great to talk to fellow fleet managers, even if we are competition, because we're still fighting the same problems and we can help each other out. And that's not going to do anything unethical because we have the same problems. We can better our industry, better things like sustainability, whatever buzzwords we want to focus on right now. We have different options. So
workforce challenge still affects you guys very much. Is that right?
Yeah. Specifically, like what?
Like hiring people. Like, are you guys short a certain percentage of employees that you'd like to hire?
Yes, it's always whether it's a truck driver, mechanic. It's we're always like everybody. You're never fully fulfilled.
Do you follow Aaron Witt's content? Because he seems to be like becoming like the chief storyteller for the industry, like getting people more interested, telling customer stories. I think that's having a positive effect.
Yeah, I did too.
Cool.
I did too, and I think that's why I support anybody to throw up content and do their thing and put out messages and tell their story.
Do you have anybody in the industry, like any content that you read typically or people that you follow?
I should, but I don't. Is that bad?
No, I'm just becoming more aware of people. Yeah. Like I had like the James Deviney on a week or so ago. He was good.
Yeah.
He's like doing something very similar. Has a podcast. Like a lot of people have podcasts, but it's a good thing. It's like because having more conversations increases the exposure, increases people's awareness to like so many things. I think you see a company or You see people are in a role and you don't really know what they do. Like how many people really know outside of the industry what a fleet manager is responsible for?
For sure.
You know, you're supposed to manage 60 million or 80 million of fleet that's over these jobs, and you know there's a lot of moving pieces. So I think all that kind of stuff helps. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think, and there is a following. There is our niche, if you will.
Sure.
So we're out there, and it's equipment people. It's dealers, it's the contractors, it's startups around technology, and there is a good, healthy supply, and Heave's one of them. There's technology, there's a market space for it, and there is activity options out there. So that's exciting.
All right. Since you've been asking about Heave, I'll ask you. I don't ask guests this, but what should we?
I can't tell a lie, so careful.
Well, this is why I want to ask. You know, at the core of what we do, is there anything that we should be looking to focus on that we're not focused on today?
I think I asked you before. How do you prevent? Because I can't name any companies besides Ajax. A field mechanic. We go through Heave. They do a great job.
Yep.
And then they call somebody and be like, you know what, man, just here's my number. Hit me up. Come straight to me.
Just for future work?
Yeah, from future work. Is that a problem for Heave?
It's not a problem. There's no way to prevent it 100%. But that's why we were very purposeful about how we set it up from the beginning. So, you know, obviously you want people to do a great job for every customer. And we want customers to have a great experience every time. What I think comes to happen is, I mean, you know, as a fleet manager, your fleet's always broke. And so
I take offense to that.
equipment breaks all the time. And so the value that we feel like we provide customers is that you don't have to worry about just one guy. We want you to have confidence that in this Southwest Florida area, we have 50 great guys. So you don't have to zero in on one. And it's funny, we've had this happen a couple of times where a guy just tries to go to the customer. Okay. And if they don't see enough value in what we provide, okay, there's nothing we can do. But you know, we also set up the economics in a certain way where the technician going directly to the customer, they don't benefit from that. We don't charge the technician any money. We don't take any money from the technician. So if they were successful doing it, they don't make any more money doing it. So I don't know, you know, what the incentive is, but we see many times with customers' first experiences, they come on, they get a guy, and they love it. And then they only want to book that one technician. And you just have to let them work through it. This happened early on with one of our biggest customers. And then, you know, they would have a machine break and they would see that individual was 4 days out. And they're like, so then it forced them to pick somebody else because it was an urgent repair. And then lo and behold, they had a great experience with the next guy. And then the next guy. And we have customers here in Tampa who have booked 25 different mechanics through us. So it's just something that we think works itself out over time. And if you deliver great value, then you don't have to focus on, you know, that kind of a concern. But short answer is that nothing we can do to prevent it. But just if we just provide great value to both the technicians and the customers, you know, we should be in a good spot.
You can't have non-competes with them?
No, we don't want to. We have a non-solicitation clause in our terms of service. So I'm not really focused on what non-solicitation really means is if Ajax puts in a service request on our app, we don't want a technician to try to call Ajax and say, "Hey, cancel that. I'll work on it." You know, that's non-solicitation. If you hire somebody, they go out, they do a good job, and you're like, hey, you don't want to use the app anymore, you just want to call them direct, that's not, violating anything. That's just your decision as a customer to do that. You know, there's nothing we can really do about that. Like I said, our goal is for companies to we make it so easy they have such a great experience that they only want to do it that way.
For sure.
So that's what we focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I don't know if you have numbers on average response time or stuff like that.
We do. We track it all the time.
But that's huge. That's the biggest thing is response time and turnaround time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the beauty of using technology. Technology allows you to respond faster. Technology removes a lot of to me, like the legacy suppliers, part of the problem is that there's just so many people. You can't be efficient. You have all of these different roles that are in between, like, the mechanic and the customer, or, on the rental side, the rental rep and the customer. It's really hard to just rent a piece from somebody. It's got to, like, go through the rental rep to, like, 3 other people in an office before it gets done. And that's the beauty of being a tech company in this space, is that you just cut out a lot of the unnecessary people, roles, paperwork, and you make it really simple. Like, here's the service, go do it.
I do like how I see you talking about transparency on the rates, the hourly rates.
Yeah.
Because that is an issue.
Sure.
That is a...
Yeah, it's a fundamental thing for us is, and that's where, like, my experience came into play in a few areas. Like, we want to run it like the opposite of how it's been. Right. In as many ways as possible. And one of the areas is, like, showing customers this is what the hourly rate is for these individuals, and then you're always choosing. You don't look. A lot of customers try to do it, with dealers that they know offline. It's like, hey, I really like Joe. Send me Joe. But at the end of the day, not every customer gets that experience, right? You can't have all these customers just requesting. And so that's one of the unique things that technology allows us to do, is we show you who's available, and you get to pick every time, along with the rates. So,
do you ever see dealers using Heave?
I do. It's funny. Rental companies are. So I'm not naive. It's probably going to take a while. But number one, because now we have a really large network of independent mechanics, we know there are certain individuals in our network, they have been hired by dealers. So number one, we know dealers use independents for certain things. I don't believe that we're going to be going out and doing field calls for dealers, but I believe we can help the overall ecosystem. So if a dealer is really behind, they could hire somebody through our app. We go out to the dealer's yard, we knock out a bunch of things, and now we've freed up a dealer tech to maybe go respond to one of their customers in the field. I think that's how it could work. We've been already doing that. We've been doing field calls and shop service for rental companies already. So they see the value. I think it's more because rental companies aren't as nearly as fully staffed with mechanics that dealers are. But we're a service company. So if a dealer wanted to use us to help, get their machines up, we would do it.
So what about dedicated PM guys?
We have PM guys.
You have dedicated lube,
Sure.
PM?
We do. Yeah. We have PM guys. We have, we have all sorts of different specialties. Welders. We do a lot of line boring. We've got, like, crane techs. We've got, a very wide variety.
Yeah, because I could see that being a good supplement. Some mechanics are, and we have some, they're above doing PMs.
They're above it.
They're above it.
See, that's the thing.
It's funny to me, but it's true.
But I think that's the value and the unique thing about being independent is that, look, they have to opt into the jobs. So if they see PM calls that come through, they don't have to take them. But, it's like when everything's a job-by-job basis if you're an existing independent. So, I don't see guys, like, not psyched about a PM job. People are still trying to take work.
Right.
They want to be busy every day. So, I don't see people not responding. Work is work, and they're getting a good rate too. It's not like they're taking less to do it.
No, I think it's great. I mean, that's part of the reason I wanted to be here. Is I like people like yourself tackling issues that are not easy to tackle, and
No.
you know, I think you guys have come a long way, and solving a problem that was there, and it's still there, and is not going away anytime soon.
No, I appreciate that. It's like I said before, like, and I know I was probably speaking for the other companies that you're helping, like the autonomous company, GearFlow, like customers like yourself are so valuable to companies like ours because look, the funny thing is, I remember you used our first product. You tried it.
Are we going there?
Oh, it's all right. Look, but like those are the lessons that we learn,
Yeah.
right? Like I was proud of it. I was proud of the
Absolutely.
product. It worked, but it just didn't. When you asked me earlier about like technicians, it's clear that our first product didn't provide enough value for it to be a real product in the market. And it's not something like you're not offending me. It's like we're invested in making a successful company. And so it would have been foolish for us to keep pursuing that first product when there wasn't enough value. It's a really hard thing. I'm not trying to make it seem like it was easy, like an easy decision.
Yeah.
But, you guys are a big reputable company. You tried it out. You didn't really get the value. It just didn't work. And so like that kind of stuff is helpful for us because
Sure.
the hardest thing, not just for a startup, but when you're selling anything, is getting real honest feedback. And like, so if I was an equipment salesperson and I call on Ajax and I don't know, let's say I'm Kubota, I don't know, and you didn't buy Kubota and I kept you kept buying whatever brands, like very rarely does that person really get this real scoop on why you're not buying, and so then you don't know what to change. And so like with our first product, because of customers like yourself, we were able to get like real feedback to where it's like, oh no, this isn't gonna work. And so it forced us to look at different things, and then we end up in service. And then once we ended up in service, it was game over. It was full speed ahead. Customers were really happy. Like it wasn't a mystery anymore. So it's not, the best thing to me is when people are honest with you. You're not offending anybody.
Yeah, feedback, right? I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't want to hear it, but
No, it's
a
hard.
gift. Yeah.
It's hard,
I mean,
but
you
yeah.
put a lot of effort into something, and your great idea. There's nothing worse than you're all pumped about your idea, and then you
Hell
tell a room
yeah.
full of people, and they're like, "Yeah, that kind of sucks."
Yeah, or it's just not gonna work. Like you're not. Look, I mean, we had at the time, I don't know, 6 employees that were coming to work every day, working hard, like you said,
Yeah.
on it. It's just to know that it's just not. The customers aren't psyched about it. It's not going to give the customers what they really, really need. The best way I've come to describe it is that what our first product was doing is solving an inconvenience. We weren't really solving a problem. And so, there's only one way you find that out. It's by real customer feedback.
Well, that's what's tough too, and I still think it's a challenge because at the end of the day, not having a mechanic, you can still say, "Oh, that's an inconvenience," because they're out there,
Mm-hmm.
but you're like maybe speeding up the process or adding a convenience factor. Because I was sitting here while you're talking, I'm thinking like, okay, the benefit of Heave maybe one day is like, okay, I'm a fleet manager and I don't want to call some cat in Kansas and then call some Volvo dealer in Tennessee when I can call Heave, and it's kind of like a one rep, one call. Look, I'm laying out the.
So I'm really
plan for
glad you read my sales pitch
how
notes
this is?
before, and you were going to mention. Yes,
Make sure the investors see that part.
that's right. It's crazy. We and honestly, I didn't even think about it when we started with service because we were just kind of like hyper focused on one area. But I think it was Con Expo. Yeah, it was our first AMP meeting. That's what it was. We go to Con Expo, first AMP meeting there. We meet a really large customer. They work in 15 different states, and I didn't realize it, but they work in 15 different states. They own, call it 8 different brands of equipment, and so they had to know 50 dealers.
Right.
And they're like, wait, you guys do what? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of like Uber for field service. So like, no, that exists. And then they started using it, and it was like, oh, now if we're in this state or this state where this brand doesn't matter, we can just go one place. And it was just like so powerful. And like I said, I didn't even think of it at the time when we started it. We were just trying to get Tampa customers to use it.
Yeah, I could see, or maybe even a smaller customer. We get wrapped up on the large contractors, but there's plenty of smaller one crew size companies that might benefit from having one vendor to pay and not worried about payment terms on 3 different dealers if they travel around. I'm just hypothetically speaking, but anyway, can't rule out the smaller fleets too, because that might be.
No,
I don't know if that's what percentage of your customer would you say is a smaller fleet versus a big fleet.
It's a higher percentage just because there's just that many more out there. It's a numbers game. But yeah, that's the unique thing is like there's a different value for the different type of customer. So for like the large customer, the value is what I just described. It's like large footprint. It doesn't matter the brand. For the smaller company, it's typically, hey, we don't get priority from the dealers, because we don't buy that much, and so for them to be getting like the same response time through us that typically a larger customer get, really powerful for them, and so it's just a different value for different people.
And I think too, somehow using technology, because technology is only good if you can get the data, right? We talked about the data.
Sure.
So it's like also thinking, if whether I'm Ajax or a smaller contractor or a larger contractor, if I use Heave, can they break down the information and present it in a meaningful fashion of, wow, you've had this many service calls and you've went through this many parts, that's kind of like where somebody like a GearFlow comes in handy.
Sure.
I want to know how many, alternators we purchased in the last 12 months. And then, using historical data to tell us, well, maybe we're going to inventory 3 of them.
Sure.
Because we know we're going to need them, and we can rely on Heave to do the rest for us because X amount of response time and whatever. I think that's where it gets exciting down the road is like, okay, because we can all pick up the phone and call and get a service call. But if Heave or whoever the technology solution is capturing that and then spitting it back to us in a presentable fashion, I think that's like next level. That's when it becomes a true value. There's a convenience, and then also, you know what? I'm going to help you be better at your job, Mr. Fleet Manager, because
here's the data.
Here's the data over the last 12 months, and then that's where your reps come in handy because they can articulate that. And
the good news for us is that, and for the customer, is that we're brand agnostic. We don't care.
Yeah.
We don't have any skin in the game, whether it's this brand or this brand or this brand. It's like we can just give you look, this is this machine, this amount of service calls, this amount of cost, this many failures of these components. So the answer today is that we're building out the data.
For sure.
There's a long way to go. We're actually hiring like a data scientist here shortly, so that will be a big step for us. Yeah, exciting stuff.
So exciting.
Well, for us,
is it going to be exciting when we walk out this door? Is it exciting to who we go meet?
Yeah. It's a very big deal.
Yeah.
It's cool to like from the world that I came from, we didn't have anybody evaluating the data.
Right.
Seriously, we talked about it earlier. It's like, hey, print. You're going to meet with that customer. Print out this from Care Tracks, and it's like a 60-page report. It's like, yeah, but the customer doesn't want me to put 60-page report on his desk for him to read. He doesn't want to read it.
No.
Like give him the 3 things.
Summarized.
Yeah, Cliff Notes.
Yep, Cliff Notes, action items. I think it's great, though. I think, in a world of we love apps and delivery, that's what's, to me, sexy about Heave is, I mean, let's face it, it's on-demand service.
And we'll get I'm a nerd now because I'm in tech. We'll get a data scientist, and he'll be able to do all his magic. I won't know how he does it. And then, so I'll just sit him in front of you, and you say, hey, this is a typical customer. And he's like, this is what I want to see. And then we tell the data scientist, go do that. Go build that. See, that's why it's exciting to me. This is what we get to do. So I appreciate you giving me some feedback and coming in.
Yeah, man.
And riffing for a little bit. And we'll have you back in I want to learn more about this autonomous.
Did we
stuff.
talk about this? Riffing is such a tech word.
I didn't know.
See, I'm a musician, but riffing is like
Oh, that's right. I saw
riffing. Like you're not the first tech person I've heard use riffing. Oh, we're gonna riff.
Okay.
And I'm like,
That's
oh,
right.
riff. What does that mean? They're like, oh, it just means like we're just gonna go back and forth on something and bounce ideas. So I'm like, oh.
See, that's the whole.
So
that's the
riffing to
beauty.
me is like I'm playing guitar right now. That's a riff.
I remember you doing
Was that me and you?
at the last event that I was at.
So we're gonna riff. Okay. I'm
So
taking that.
We'll have you back and we'll riff some more.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan, for coming by.
All right. Happy to be here. Thanks, man.